Today's episode of Not Your Average Lives is with Meghan Krause. And I have to apologize because I introduced her as Meghan Krause. And she actually did a workshop for some of my students. And so I felt so bad at the end when she said Meghan Krause. So yes, we know her name now. The E is not silent. But one of the things that we talk about a lot of things in this episode. She is so uh, full of wisdom, years of wisdom, plus lots of certifications and credentials. She is really all about full life well-being, human life well-being. And she also has a lot of data that she shares or knows about. And one of the things we get into, she talks about the midlife nadir. And well, she uses nadir a couple of times. She talks about her nadir and then later. And I honestly didn't even know what the word meant. And so I looked up the definition. And so what she speaks to is that there is this period in time in life when our satisfaction is at its lowest point, and there's different reasons for it. So one of the things I loved, and we didn't even really get to this topic till the very end. She talks about the 5 levers of life satisfaction. And it's all based on real scientific data. But we also talk about her midlife transformation, which happened about 10 years prior to mine, because mine was at 47. So hers is was at 37. She's, I think, 43 now. But she talks about, and it was kind of like the perfect storm of, like, it was a health crisis and she was dealing with all different kinds of things. Plus, her a long-term partner left her. So a relationship failed. So you can imagine, kind of at probably the rock bottom you get to when nothing is going right in your life. And it sounds like that was where she was, but she's rebounded. So she even describes herself as the character. If you're familiar with Baby Boom, that movie with Diane Keaton, she's like, I was kind of like the Diane Keaton, where she couldn't get any satisfaction, although a surface appearance of success, which was so much my life. And when I finally realized I needed to change things. So maybe you can relate as you're hearing her to share her story. But we talk about in the very beginning about her podcast. The name of her podcast is Bullshift. And I think I love wordplay. So that's really fun. And we also get into some of the, tools she uses as a well-being coach. So we talk about tapping, we talk about hypnosis, we talk about intuition. So it's a really, really great episode. I think it's jam-packed with lots of information. So I hope you will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. So let's get to the episode now. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And with me today, I have Meghan Krause. And Meghan, I love Meghan. She and I are in a mastermind together, but I didn't really know her because it's a very large group of people. And so I was reaching out for help I do this monthly workshop. I do different workshops for my students. And I thought the subject that she could come in and speak on, and she knows a lot of stuff, but this is tapping in particular. And Meghan, you can share a little bit about that. But I loved her vibe so much, and she's so great. And I asked her if she'd come on the podcast, and she's in the midlife age range. So welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lori. I'm really happy to be here. And I had a blast leading that tapping workshop for your clients.
I never have tapped. So that was like my first experience, a complete virgin going into it. So, but anyways, one of the things that I love that I don't know a lot of background about, and I thought that would just start a good conversation, is that you have a podcast as well called Bullshift. And I love it. It's like, cause I like words. I like play on words. And so of course it's like, ooh, she say bullshit or bullshift. What does that mean? And so why don't you just start by sharing about why it's named that and how it began, how it got started, and that might roll into your backstory as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, bullshit, is sort of the lies, the untruths that either don't feel good, they can be harmful, and they, perpetuate kind of bullshit perpetuates negativity and displeasure. And a lot of people in what I call early midlife, which I kind of range as 35 to 55, are starting to awaken from like human development theory. They're starting to, in your 30s, you're trying to kind of find your life. And in your 40s, you're really tuning into your success. And in your 50s, you're really tuning into being more generative with your time and your talents. And underscoring all of this is this notion that we've got a lot of stuff we've held fast to that doesn't really serve us. And so that's why I chose the play on bullshit to be Bullshift, helping people shift toward a more honest conversation about this phase of life, a more compelling story that they can tell themselves to serve them. And, my work is in some mindset work. I'm a double board certified coach. So, I work in mindset. I'm pursuing hypnotherapy. So I'm pursuing subconscious work as well. And I really want to help people tell a more empowering story. For themselves.
Yeah. So it's like bullshit on what they're telling themselves, right? That's kind of what the play on
is. I'm going to pull out the bullshit flag and throw it on the field and say.
Does that come from, because, what I first think about is, not only telling stories about, that aren't true, like, in other words, downplaying your talents, not understanding the wisdom that you have within you, but also not stepping up to who you really are as well.
Yeah.
And that, to me, a good friend would say, I'm calling bullshit on you because you're not, being who I know you to be, kind of thing.
Yeah. Operating in old patterns, that aren't really true to our core self.
Yeah.
So and I know this is kind of where our work aligns.
Yeah. Well, you've got major credentials. I'm going to say, like, I was looking at what she submitted and I was like, holy moly. And you work in the corporate environment as well, doing what you do so well. And then you obviously help, you have your own business on the side. So tell me a little bit about how you came to get all these credentialing. Was it something that you had within you, knew you wanted to do early on, or was it something that you experienced? I think you had, was it chronic fatigue or some autoimmune?
Yes to all.
And because I had that, and so I can relate. But so I'd love to hear that, how you kind of came to a place where you were like, something's not right here.
Yeah, absolutely. I had my nadir in my early midlife around age 38, and I'm in my early 40s now. And I had been working in wellbeing for a long time. At this point, I've been working in wellbeing for more than 20 years. And it's my second career, although it's always my first calling and has been since I was a kid. But at the time, I was working for myself, developing wellbeing products and solutions. And, when you own your own business and you have to secure new clients and maintain clients and make sure they're happy and et cetera, that can take a toll. But in this case, it was a perfect storm of an autoimmune flare-up. I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, a breakup with my long-term partner, a black mold related event that really exacerbated everything, which culminated in stage 3 adrenal fatigue, or HPA axis dysfunction, as it's commonly referred to now. So the stage 3 adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue.
So what are the symptoms, just in case anybody adrenal fatigue is sometimes the result of stress, which is often caused by not living authentically. So how does that present?
For me, it presented in a few ways. Again, I was managing multiple conditions, so I can't really isolate the chronic fatigue, but getting out of bed in the morning was really a struggle, and not just like mentally and emotionally, but also physically. I had a lot of pain. I had depression and anxiety is something that I seldom ever experienced in my past. I had a flare-up of digestive issues. I was puffy. My skin would peel. And then I ended up going to the ER a couple nights in a row, and my doctor said, you need to get out of this place where you're living, because I had welts that were like the size of a quarter all over my body. So
Good
Anyway,
for that
that's when I
doctor
knew.
for, did he recognize it as potentially mold? Is that,
Yeah,
oh, or
she's
she?
wonderful. She's an integrative care
Mhm.
medical doctor, and just for some context, in my struggles prior to this, she had recommended I do a past life regression. My MD recommended I do a past life regression. I think that's important to restate, because it's showing a blending of ways of thinking and approaching and supporting the whole person. And it's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, she probably saved you in many ways. I mean, you could have gone on for months and months and years, and probably have some, even still to this day, suffering from some symptoms, or long-term side effects from it. What you
Yeah,
went
yeah,
through.
it
Yeah.
took many, many months of healing. And during that time, I worked with a coach. And while I had already worked in well-being as a marketer, as a well-being director for a college, um, as a content creator, I hadn't ever been a coach or worked with a coach. I had ran or oversaw a coaching program at the college. And in my work with a coach, it was very transformative for me. And then I became a double board certified coach in health and well-being and lifestyle medicine.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. And so, when did these, was the kind of the health crisis all hitting the fan at 38? Is
Yeah.
that okay? All right.
37 and 38. So
Okay.
definitely early. But in that time, I also experienced some professional listlessness. I had achieved a fair amount of success in well-being at that point. But what I was doing at that time in terms of developing well-being products and solutions just wasn't fulfilling for me. And I realized that it led me to where I am today. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, what I found out when I found out, like, my real purpose was in coaching and teaching, what I found is that there were many jobs that I had where I used those skills. And so those are jobs I was happy at. But there were many jobs that I had where I was solo and I wasn't working in the team environment, and I wasn't, unifying a group to reach a certain goal together. And, a lot of the aspects of coaching and guiding people that I used in my corporate job, when that skill set, or the things that lit me up most, went away from the job. Because I had, my most recent corporate job was solo. Like, I didn't have any team to manage. I didn't have any, like, it was a just solo project, one person project. And yeah, I was so unfulfilled.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you are in that similar situation where you have this corporate job, and the work that you do in that job will change over time as you work on things and you deliver on whatever you're supposed to work on. Yeah. And the more you use that you're good at, and what lights you up, the more happy and fulfilled you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the work I do by day. I work as an employee well-being program manager for a 26,000 person healthcare system, the top 15 healthcare system in the US. And you can imagine how tremendous an opportunity it is right now to be in that capacity. And there's some transfer over into my personal business too.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were saying that you were working in well-being, I wrote down working in well-being, but not being well.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the great irony when I
Yeah.
was so sick.
Yeah.
And it played out in a few ways. There's shame for me. How I'm supposed to be the well-being person around here. What kind of cred do I have? And my thinking has since evolved in a lot of ways with respect to that, thankfully. But at that time, it just further compounded all of the symptoms I was experiencing and the struggles I had.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a path you had to walk so you could help people with that,
Yeah,
right?
it's so
Yes. Oh,
true.
so true. So true. Okay. So now, like, one of the things that I was so impressed about when you came in and coached my students through that tapping exercise is that you have a lot of tools. I mean, you've
Mhm.
learned a lot. Now you're learning hypnosis, and you can,
Mhm.
that's one other your tool set. So, like, what are the things, that techniques that you've learned, and how to use them? I don't know what you want to talk about tapping in particular. A lot of people might not know what tapping is.
Sure, yeah. I'll quickly answer what tapping is and then I'll talk more broadly. So
Okay.
tapping is it's energy psychology. It's a combination of exposure therapy and cognitive therapy with um, traditional Chinese medicine and our meridians and qi, are the life force. And so we use tapping to move through an emotion, to metabolize it, and to sort of ratchet down our response to an event or a thought that is on repeat and triggering for us. And so tapping is one of the tools that I use.
But
And
there's actual points like on the face. And
yes,
yeah, it's
yes.
just so interesting. And doesn't it derive, well, you said Chinese medicine, but
Mhm.
it's like, doesn't it derive from acupuncture in a way? It's not acupuncture replacement, but doesn't it use a lot of the points that are used in
Yes,
acupuncture?
yes.
That
In
was so
traditional
fascinating.
Chinese medicine,
Yeah.
there are these meridians and there are points along them. And whether you're doing acupuncture, acupressure, or tapping, you use these points.
So
Mhm.
these are age old techniques, like ages old, right?
Thousands of years old.
Thousands of years. Yeah. Yeah. And then we got
Mhm.
like, Western medicine, and, oh, here, take a pill.
Yeah.
And that just numbs you instead of like, really solves the problem at the root. So I love that. Okay. So,
Yeah. And through a combination of professional training, schooling, and then personal interest, I have a few others. Um, I went to grad school a couple times, and the second time I went for community health promotion and integrative healing therapies. And from the Center for Spirituality and Healing at the University of Minnesota. And it's a very progressive, mission driven entity. And at the time, this would have been almost 10 years ago that I studied there. I studied Reiki, aromatherapy, acupressure, functional nutrition. Yeah, kind of a gamut of tools. And when I work with an individual, the one tool I haven't talked about yet that I use is intuition. So I've been developing my psychic abilities and my intuition, and working with a guide on that process. And so that's part of the work that I do with people.
that's so cool. So how would you, because, eh, for so long in my life, I just like didn't even listen to those, like, I don't know. I call them heart centered, kind of nudges or universal
Mhm.
downloads, or I don't know, you might have a name for it, but what is what the universe is trying to speak to you, and you're just like not, you're just like suppressing it. You're just like, oh,
Yeah.
that is really stupid. That is really a crazy idea. That doesn't make any sense. What makes sense is what my brain thinks, which is all analytical and all based on my past experience. So if my intuition is telling me something that I've never even heard before, or never even experienced before, of course it's going to be like suppressed, as kind of second nature. So for a long time, I was like, all I knew about intuition was that it was like deja vu. Oh, that was deja vu. So that was the closest thing I guess I could come to intuition. Or like if you're in a dark alley and ooh, something scary is, this is not a good idea. That kind of intuition, but not any sort of intuition that was guiding me on a more purposeful path, which now I
Mhm.
know it does for us.
Mhm.
So how do you, and you said you have a guide, and you're obviously trying to learn this at a much like a mastery level. What do you, so that's my dog in the background, so I apologize. My husband must be home. We'll ignore him. So, what do you suggest like somebody start to do that
Mhm.
they can like start to listen to that intuition?
Yeah. There are a couple things. So, first, we all have these capabilities. We all do. Some are maybe a little more predisposed to them, but everyone has these abilities. And like you, I just repressed mine. I mean, I had events happen when I was a kid that as so many kids are very intuitive. They're really locked into their body, mind, and their spirituality. And it's taught out of us. Like in the traditional education system, we're definitely all up in our head, and managing our mindset is so foundational. I absolutely believe in the power of self-coaching as a practice, but it's not the whole picture. And so I had a few experiences as a kid, including one with my grandma who is deceased. And at the time, it felt really real, but I explained it away as a dream. I've since learned it wasn't a dream. And, I've done enough training to know that my gifts are real and they're strong. I just need to nurture them, and others have this too. And so a good way to approach it is through I'll share an exercise if that's helpful. It's called grounding and connecting. And so it involves accessing what you might call your still small voice within you. And that voice can happen anywhere from your heart down to your gut. And how you experience that knowing is going to be different for you, Lori, for example, than it is for me. But you will know it. I can't assign it to you. So it's interesting because what I'm now learning about human design is very connected to how I access my intuition, which is in my gut. So anyway, grounding and connecting is a pretty simple exercise where you take time to get quiet and you tune into sort of a sensation. Imagine sort of a ball of light in your abdomen, and you send that ball of light down to your feet, through into the ground, and have it branch out much like a tree, the roots of a tree. And you connect those roots. There's got to be at least 3. So it's like 3 legs of a stool, and it's grounding into the core of the earth. And this is what you're visualizing. Okay. And you're connecting that energy from the core of the earth back up into your body, and you send it through your body. So that's the grounding piece. And then the connecting piece is in the same way that you send energy down, you send it up to the sky, to the angels, through a column of bright light. And you then connect and you send that back down through your body, again, dispersing through your body. So now you've got these 2 kind of energies, the grounding energy and then that lighter angelic energy. And you can picture like a swirl in clockwise fashion. And you carry that with you, and start each morning that way. That's a very simple but powerful exercise. Visualization is so powerful. It's a tool we don't use enough. And so for someone who might be sort of skeptical about what I've just shared, fair enough. Like, I work in a healthcare system and I've gone to grad school a couple of times. Like I'm ambidextrous when it comes to these fields and ways of knowing. And so I just invite you to consider this exercise and what it presents for you. And then when you want to tune it, so now that you're like grounded, right, and connected, then you ask a simple question, a yes/no question. And you ask a question that you already know the answer to, that's definitive. So an example would be, was I born in, and then the place where you were born? And your intuition will tell you yes. And you notice where that sensation is. And it's not going to be a loud, big physical sensation. It's probably going to be pretty gentle. Again, that still small voice is really how we think about it. But over time, you'll get more tuned to it.
That's so interesting. I wonder if you ask, was I born, and you say the wrong thing,
Yep.
There's another feeling that would happen.
Then it's nothing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
You can do the same sort of exercise with a pendulum. So let's say a necklace with a pendant on the bottom of it, for example. And you can say, show me yes, and look at which way it swings. Show me no. And it's going to, whether it's side to side or front to back, as yes is different for every person. So for me, forward and back is yes.
I
And
just learned about pendulums. I didn't even know about it. I mean, I knew, I think we did a ghost tour when we were in Key West once, and it was so hilarious. And they used it, like, I think they used a spoon or something, but it was similar to the pendulum. And I know, back when I was a kid, I know there were things on pendulums, but, uh, yeah. So to actually get answers, because I don't know my specific birth time.
mm-hmm,
And I know with human design, you need to know your birth time. And
mm-hmm.
so my mom, I asked her, several times, and she was like, hang on a second, I'm going to get him. Let me pause. So I asked my mom over and over, like, when was I born? When was I born? And all she would say was, sometime in the morning, around 9. So at least I know like the morning, and I can ask, like yes, no questions to kind of narrow it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to know that. Some people don't know that.
Yeah. I found that for me, I use the pendulum to help me really tune my intuition. You know, uh, as I've developed it and strengthened it, this is sort of like cross-referencing it. You know what I mean?
That's cool. So where, I know there's YouTube videos on how to use a pendulum, because I went and searched afterwards, because I was like, I'm going to find out when I was born. So, yeah, where do you even get a pendulum? Can you use like a necklace or?
Yeah, I use a
Okay.
necklace.
Okay.
That has it's a fashionable necklace that has a beautiful kind of pendant. And
Oh, cool. Okay.
mm-hmm.
All right. So what other tools like hypnosis? Talk about that a little bit. So I have never been hypnotized, but I I've seen it. I was at a Las Vegas show where the guy, he brought people up on stage and they hypnotized, and it's believable. But then part of you're like skeptic is going, did they go backstage first and, have a deal that they're going to be like this? You really want to believe it, right? So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
here's the thing about it. You've seen that sort of entertainment hypnotism, but hypnotherapy, clinical hypnotherapy is different, and yet they operate under a certain amount of, well, not a certain amount. They operate under suggestibility. So I'm not the one actually hypnotizing you, you're hypnotizing yourself. I'm facilitating that. And you can always come out of it, you can always access it's easy to access the here and now as well. So and I don't want to get out ahead of myself, because I'm still training. I'm not practicing just yet. Soon, very soon. So anyway,
But you basically you don't like fall asleep, right? And
no, no.
it's kind of like you're just at this very peaceful place.
Yeah, you're at a certain brainwave state, and you're accessing your subconscious. That's why we do it. And so, working with people in early midlife, they've developed a lot of patterns and maybe found it difficult to step outside those patterns. And mindset, which I coach people on, is one pathway, and the subconscious is sort of like a fast track. So that's where my interest lies.
Yeah, one of the things that I was taught in my neuro coaching is really how to do affirmations in a correct way, so you can really kind of rewire those
Mm-hmm.
built up like stories in your head that are
Yeah.
on repeat. I
Mm-hmm.
call him, like, I always refer to Dr. Phil, because I remember him saying one time, you got those tapes running in your head, those videotapes. And so I always think of that when I first started watching, I was always so obsessed with the way he could like get to the root of the problem so quickly and identify what that kind of like repeat tape was playing for people.
Yeah.
So that probably should have led me a long time ago that maybe I should be a coach, because that stuff is really fascinating to me. So yeah, so people, affirmations, so many of the time, what bugs me about them, and I used to do them the wrong way too, is that you pick the ones that are nice and like, oh, that sounds so good, I like that, instead of the ones you really need. which like are opposing the beliefs that you have that you need to
Mhm.
rewire. And so
Mhm.
can you speak a little bit to that? Do you use affirmations? Has
Yeah, I use affirmations. I also did the NLP certification. So I use NLP techniques. I have trained in MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is a medical model to meditation and mindfulness. Um, and
you like to be a student?
I do like to be a student.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, I am naturally curious, but these things all work together. And, not everything works for everyone. And so
Right.
for me, it's useful to just have a diverse toolkit, because I've got clients that are like, what are you talking about intuition? And I've and they might be more interested in lifestyle medicine. Great. We can do a therapeutic intervention that's lifestyle medicine based and help you get off your cholesterol medication and help you, you know, get off your, change your diabetes status. And so I like being able to meet people where they're at, but also move them forward. And it's really in service of purpose.
Yeah, I love that because it's like you can read somebody and work with them for a bit and then really understand
Mhm.
what works best for them. So
Yeah.
I love that. How do you use that? Are you able to use that in your corporate job as well? Do you work
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
individuals? Oh, good.
Not all of them.
Yeah.
If anyone who I work with was listening to this, they'd be like, wait a second, what? We don't know this about you. But I,
Bullshift.
yeah, exactly. But I I designed and delivered the content and coaching for an 8-week lifestyle medicine pilot for healthcare workers during the pandemic. So a very difficult time. And the clinical outcomes we got were amazing. And it's
Oh, that's
being presented
great.
at the National American College of Lifestyle Medicine Conference. It's written up in the American Cardiology something or other journal. Um,
Talk about
and
impact.
yeah, and the thing about it is food is medicine, of course, and most of us know that already. But our ability to access the change we want to make doesn't always happen in the most obvious ways. So, someone who is interested in, let's say they're interested in weight loss, for example, it'd be very easy for me to say, like, turn to this diet or that diet, or, or eat more plants. And yet their capacity for change might first be in their sleep. Like, that's a really pressing need for them, or they have more interest around it, or they have more perceived self-efficacy around it. And so that's where we start. And then we create a cascade of positive effects that transcend sleep into other aspects of their life.
So you
And
start making the change like in their subconscious in the like at night when they go to sleep.
well, so I will when I am a practicing clinical
Yeah.
hypnotherapist.
Yeah, but there's
But
things you can do without having like I have told my students this, but because I've learned it through I had somebody come on my podcast and she talked about interpreting your dreams, and it was so
oh yeah.
interesting. And
Mhm.
so, but she, suggested some ways in which you could make requests of your subconscious. And so maybe
Absolutely.
you could do something like that with somebody,
Yes,
without having to know the hypnosis. But
for
yeah.
sure. And I do. And I connect people with self hypnosis tools as well.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, like, in this intervention I did at work, we didn't use that.
Got
We
it.
stuck with the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine
Got it.
and coaching.
Okay. So you didn't really use sleep in that thing. You just
Yes,
use it on your
sleep. So
clients.
sleep is one of the sleep, social connectedness, stress, and then feet, fingers, and forks. So fingers is substance use,
Got it.
cigarettes, alcohol, other drugs. Forks is what we eat. Feet is moving, and then yeah.
So
So
what
those are
did you
the.
do with sleep for them? Because if you weren't using hypnosis.
Oh, and this is super interesting, by the way. Um, Before the intervention, the average rating of the self-reported rating of sleep was 7 out of 10, being 10 being the worst. And they were a 7 out of 10.
Oh, so they're basically not what this is. Oh, I thought you're trying to heal them through sleep, but they're not getting enough sleep.
Well, they might be not getting enough, or it's poor quality.
Right.
One or the
Okay.
other.
Okay. So
And
yeah, I
then,
see what you're saying. So fix the problem of them not sleeping, not getting to a deep enough sleep, not having longer sleep cycles, fix that problem, and then they'll be ready. Ah, okay. I get it.
and then on the back end of that intervention, and it was a group-based experience. Again, scale of 0 to 10.
So you say intervention. I always think like it's extreme.
Oh,
So
sorry. Yeah, that's sort of my public health. That's my public health background speaking. Program is a simple way. Yeah. So on the back end of that 8-week experience, if on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being best, they had a 7 out of 10. They'd done a complete 180 on their sleep. And that was just one metric. Perceived stress went down. Some lost weight that they had wanted to lose weight. I'm not saying weight loss is, the be all end all if you don't want to lose weight or if you're sick.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it was amazing. And so, yes, facilitating better sleep. Some of that happens when you're moving. If you're moving more and you've got an intense day, you're going to sleep better at night.
It's like my 4-year-old's grandson, who I was just watching 4 of my 6 grandchildren their parents went out of town. And like the more exercise he gets, like he went to soccer practice, slept so good. He has sleep issues, went to bed good, slept the whole night. I was like, yeah, I'm sure the soccer little practice helped with that one.
Yeah. And developing wind down practices that promote other aspects of their well-being, everything from like nervous system regulation, throwing your legs up against the wall, for like a half hour before you go to bed, as one example. There are just a lot of tools. And the beauty of it is most of what I teach, most of how I support my clients through coaching are through tools you can do anytime, anywhere. No one necessarily has to know you're doing them. And they're very low cost or free.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I know a lot of people, they don't realize that, there are a lot of answers that can solve a lot of problems that are just free of charge. Just understanding and learning it, and YouTube is a plethora.
And so often it's not even about the knowledge. People are just more attached to their suffering than the unknown of the change.
Yes, that's a good point. I always think of James tells the story. We both have James as a coach, about the dog sitting on a nail and he's crying. And there's a guy sitting next to his dog and he's sitting on a nail crying, and somebody walks by and goes, why doesn't that dog get off the nail? And his owner says, oh, because that would hurt too much. So the pain of sitting on the nail is perceived as, so that's change, right? Change is more painful. So I've always loved that story. Heard it a million times. So yeah. So as we wind down, what's the one thing that you want to leave the listeners with, that for them to remember, for them to chew on as they think about maybe where they are and where they want to be, and if change is involved, what's the next step they take?
Yeah. Well, let's take it back up a level in terms of perception of one's abilities during this phase of life. I think we're told a very incomplete story of midlife, of middlescence. And the story is really incomplete because we operate under this sort of narrative that life is one kind of like big decline. And I like to say that we're at the peak of our life in different aspects of our life, wherever we are in the life course. And so, for example, making a Nobel Prize winning discovery happens most often at age 40. Salary for women is highest most often at 39. For men, it's 48. Our math skills are highest at age 50. Our ability to understand people's emotions at age 51. And so we're told this story that we hit our nadir, and it isn't just a story. The data back it up. Roughly age 47, 46, 48. And that has to do with life satisfaction. And this is true wherever you are in the world, with the exception of a couple countries. It's true no matter geography within the US, for example. And so there's a pretty convincing case that that's a hard time in life. And it turns back up, it's a U curve. So there's an upswing around age 55. But there's so much going on that's good and worth celebrating. For me, when I work with people roughly ages 35 to 55, and what it comes down to is life satisfaction. So quality of life is generally fairly high for people who in the ages we serve. And that doesn't necessarily translate to high life satisfaction. And so we have to look at, well, what's the anatomy of life satisfaction? And the research is pretty telling. And the research says happiness with your romantic life, satisfaction with your physical health, your relationships with loved ones, fulfillment from work, and then contentment with your spirituality or religion. And you can imagine how those areas of your life feel really pressing, but how we live our days, whether we're living what matters most, is totally different. And so our ability to step outside of this narrative of this being this low point without us having any agency is about really tuning into, well, what are the levers I need to pull that are going to increase my life satisfaction?
Interesting. So you call those 5 levers of life satisfaction?
Yeah, that's what I call them. But
yeah,
the research backs up those 5 areas. And it's like we've overly complicated things, and we of course get attached to like material realities, and chasing certain material comforts without really tuning into these 5 areas.
Yeah, it's so true. So true. Yeah, so good. So good. I appreciate you coming and sharing all your wisdom. It's so massive. I think we could talk for a lot longer and go in a lot more depth, but I appreciate you being here and giving me a little more than 30 minutes of your time. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm passionate about this topic. So if anyone listening wants to dive deeper into what's going on in adolescence and how to support yourself and create life satisfaction, let's talk.
Yeah. And you have a podcast, so they can follow you there, and we'll put links in the show notes. And your website, you have a website, I'm sure?
Yeah, MeghanKrause.com. And I am at Meghan_Krause on Instagram.
All righty. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.